Hey everybody! Today we're going to be talking about our antibiotic disc and sterile disc application techniques that we're going to be using in our class. And these techniques are really just used to it's for the application of discs onto media, generally for what we call sensitivity testing, which is a concept that we'll talk more about later on in the semester. So let's talk about the materials that you need in order to do basically a disk transfer or a disk application. So you will need your Bunsen burner and a striker to light it. You're going to need basically ethyl alcohol, considering that we're going to be using our tweezers or forceps. Since these are metal, we cannot hold them inside of the flame itself. So I'll show you kind of a different aseptic technique that we are going to be using in order to keep our little tweezers sterile, or at least as clean as possible, again using our ethyl alcohol. You're also going to need, if you're doing this, you're going to need a plate basically. You're going to need whatever plate that is that you're going to be putting your sample on. For sensitivity testing, again, which we generally do with this technique, it is going to be what we call a Mueller-Hinton 2 auger that we use, but depending on the specific lab that we're doing, we might be using different kinds of media as well. Now, if we're doing this again on an antibiotic side of things, normally what you're going to need then is some kind of dispenser with an antibiotic disc on it. And the way that these work out is that inside of here, there's a whole bunch of little discs, and these discs have a specific type of antibiotic on it. This one, it says the name on there, happens to be penicillin. Kind of hard to see there, but this just happens to be a penicillin disc that we have here. And again, we're going to be putting that on the plate basically to see how well it performs against a specific type of microbe. Now, I did also mention that there is also a sterile disc application, and we tend to use this one as well if we run a lab where we look at things like disinfectants and antiseptics. And again, disinfectants are items that we use to clean up our lab area, whereas antiseptics are things that we can use to basically clean the body and keep those areas sterilized. So a good example of a disinfectant could be bleach, whereas an antiseptic could be things like iodine. And if you're running the technique where that you're using, again, some kind of disinfectant or antiseptic, we don't really have discs that come pre-made with the specific disinfectant and antiseptic on it, so we had to add them ourselves. And that's where we end up kind of with these little guys here, again, which are our sterile discs. And then you will need some kind of antiseptic or disinfectant. So I happen to have some bleach here, and that's what we're going to be dipping into in order to basically get it on the disc. So those are the basic materials, again, that you're going to need to either do this on an antibiotic side or on this disinfectant antiseptic side. So let's go ahead and run through the procedure and kind of talk about the way that procedure works for both types of applications. It is very similar, there's just kind of an extra step if you're doing a disinfectant or antiseptic. So let's go ahead and do a procedure. So we'll start out with the antibiotic one. Let's go ahead and get our flame going. And basically what we're going to start out with, so we have to clean off our forceps. So we have to flame the forceps, and the way that you do that, or our tweezers, so you'll basically just kind of dip them down into the ethyl alcohol, and then you're going to pass them through the flame so that they catch on fire. And this is very important. Only pass them through the flame. Do not hold them. Again, this is a metal that conducts heat, so it's going to get hot really fast, and then you can burn your hands. So only pass it through the flame, and then we're good to go. Some other safety considerations that we have to worry about. Let's say that for some reason you pass it through the flame, you freak out, you put it into the beaker, now the beaker's on fire, you freak out some more, you knock it over, now your table's on fire. Walk away. It is going to be an alcohol fire, and this alcohol fire will generally burn out very, very quickly. If for some reason, again, the fire is inside of the beaker or something like that, you can just put a larger beaker over it and it's going to kill the flame inside of there. All around though, again, alcohol fires burn out quickly on their own, so if for some reason something catches on fire here, that is part of the alcohol, just step away and just let it burn off. All right, I'm going to go ahead and redo my first step again real fast so that it actually is sterile, right? So pass it through the flame, again, dip it in the alcohol, pass it through the flame, now it is sterile. Now the next thing we have to do is that we have to get these tiny little discs out, and it can be kind of a pain sometimes to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and turn this off for a second. What I like to do, again, is that tiny little disc in there. What I like to do is basically on one side, you can kind of push the disc a little bit so that it comes out. And then on the other side, you can then grab the disc and now you have it. And let's see, this one was penicillin. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take the lid off of my plate real fast. I have my penicillin side right here. And I'm just gonna gently take the disc, give it a couple gentle taps, and that's it. So let me relight this guy right here. So after you've done the couple taps on there, again, just kind of make sure that it stays in there so that when we invert our plates, the discs do not fall down. So at the end again, dip it back in the alcohol, pass it through the flame, and that's how we flame it to clean it. So those are going to be the steps again that we're going to be using if we're using an antibiotic disc. Now let's go ahead and do the one again if we're adding a disinfectant or an antiseptic where we have to use the sterile discs. So again, we're going to start out same basic thing, get your Bunsen burner going, dip your tweezers in the alcohol, pass it through the flame until they catch on fire, give it a little bit of time for them to cool down. Then we're going to use the same kind of trick again. I'm going to take my little disc here, I'm going to try to push it to the side. If it wants to. Okay. There we go, I got my disc out of there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dip it into my disinfectant. So just kind of give it a quick dip. There we go. Now we've added the disinfectant to it. And now I'm going to add it to my bleach area. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to dip my tweezers in the alcohol, pass them through the flame so that they're now clean. And that is the way that that procedure works out there. Now a couple notes on the discs, and again, kind of since this procedure can be a little bit finicky with getting those discs out. If you happen to drop a disc on the table, normally we just have to trash it. And if for some reason you drop a disc onto your plate where it is not supposed to go, you can't really remove it. And the big thing here is that antibiotic or whatever disinfectant or antiseptic that we're using, the second it touches the plate, it actually soaks into it quite a bit. And because of that, again, wherever it lands, we kind of just have to leave it. So even if it's not in the best spot, you just kind of have to leave it in that area, and then you may have to try to like redo some of your little your tags on the bottom of it. But really, other than again kind of all the different items that we've covered, I think that should be everything that I need to cover for our antibiotic disc or our sterile disc transfer or application.